For today's evaluation, we will be talking about a player who is 6'3", just 21 years old, an insane athlete, and, just one of the better, I think, prospects in this draft class, period. Someone who I could see could be an A.J. Brown type player. It is Quentin Johnston, a guy who there's a lot to like about Quentin Johnston, and I want to get into the film and talk about why I'm such a fan of him and why I think that he should be a high first rounder, and I think even a top 10 pick does not seem crazy to me. First, let's look at his PFF page, and you're immediately like, oh, okay, I'm listening to an insane person. An insane person is rambling to me because you're talking about Quentin Johnston being this incredible top 10 pick guy, but you look at his stats, and they are not very good at all. I mean, PFF grade of, it did get better every year. You like to see that, but still, 76.2 overall grade last year was his best grade. Drop rate, definitely, not ideal. Below average contested catch rate. Now, the yards per route ran, okay, that's very good. He does have results, but as a whole, these advanced stats, not that great. The one thing I would say is that, well, I still include it in the video, PFF grades for wide receiver don't really do a great job at telling you if they're going to be good or not at the next level. They just don't. Now, again, I like PFF grades in certain aspects because in certain positions, they do a good job of telling you who's going to be successful and who isn't, such as edge rushers. But for wide receivers, I'm not saying throw it out, but 76, not a terrible grade, not a good one, but not something I'm going to completely write off a prospect for, especially because I love his tape so much. So, going over here, Quentin Johnston, that's the route he's running. Simple route. Could not be more simple. Zone coverage, just get open underneath. Okay, simple enough. Right when this play begins, however, you see him look over, and this is something that I don't know if you can teach fully. Antonio Brown had this a little bit. He was probably the best example I can think of, but more of a modern example. Not that Antonio Brown's that long ago, but someone who's playing right now. I could take an A.J. Brown. I brought up that comparison earlier, and I can really see a lot of A.J. Brown comparisons with him of just finding the soft spots in zone. His route on this play is to run underneath, but he looks up and realizes there's a better gap for him to run to, which is further down the field. Watch, look at him then go deep, and look at him be in a much bigger window than he otherwise would have been. He is able to make that catch and pick up a nice chunk play there. I mean, that's just really good football of understanding where the gap is. Now, maybe that's how it was supposed to be. Again, I'm not in the huddle. There's reason to believe that maybe this was the way his route was supposed to be, just given that, and he kind of ran it a little bit differently. But even if so, the fact that he sold so hard that it was going to be an underneath route only for him then to run deep, it's route running either way. So it's either great awareness or great route running. Either way, I'm a fan. Like route running like this, I mean, I do get some, again, I'm going to keep bringing up comparisons, and I'm not saying he'll be as good as these players, but just, what those players are known for. Sometimes some Julian Edelman-esque route running with Johnston. No one does it quite like Edelman did, but still, this is an example where it's a one-on-one matchup. Pure one-on-one matchup. You see Johnston's route on this play. Watch how when this play begins, you see that right here. Where is Johnston running? He hasn't given it away. Now, he's cutting over the middle, but he has not given away what he's doing. And you see the player who's covering him is so far off because you do have to be afraid of, getting burned down the field by Johnston. So that's definitely something you have to be aware of. But Johnston taking advantage of that, not making it clear what he's doing. So that's the plus side, is you get the defensive back further out of position. The downside is you're not currently where you need to be, and you have to now cut very well to get to where you need to be. That's where things get a little bit trickier for Johnston, but watch how well he's going to do it. Watch how he just cuts immediately and is able to get open for an easy completion and then breaks out of a tackle and is able to just go. I mean, this is what he was able to do consistently in college, was these kind of highlight reel level plays, and the fact that he can do it at his size, at 6'3", that's what really excites me about Johnston. I think you could argue there are better route runners and there are players who cut better in this draft. Not a lot, but I think you could argue it. However, I think that what he's able to do with his height, he is the only guy in this draft class who can be able to be a big player who can also do that, which is why I bring up the A.J. Brown comparison, because he's another big guy who can do that kind of stuff. Like something like this is another example, just good footwork, where again, Concept very simple. Zone coverage, just finding a gap underneath where the defensive player is supposed to be covering. All right, simple enough. Watch how when this play begins. You see right here, again, not giving anything away. You see number 3 for the defense, and you see him start to turn his hips and move further deep. He can't get burned down the field, so he has to respect this. So when Johnston then cuts on a dime and is able to stop, he is able to make the catch and even makes a move after the catch, and look at him go. I mean, he's so difficult to bring down in open space, and those are moves that I think could work at the next level, but even if they don't, I still think that what he's able to do to get himself open will work at the next level, which is why I definitely would expect him to have some success. One last thing I have to talk about is being a pure outside receiver. If I'm going to be honest, I think this draft class is a bit disappointing in terms of the outside receivers. I don't love a lot of the guys who, you know, are coming out of the draft, because I don't love if they can win on the outside, because that is something that kind of separates the good receivers from the great ones, is how consistently can you win on the outside. Well, here Quentin Johnston is trying to win on the outside. Single safety deep. It's zone coverage, but it's a one-on-one matchup. He's running a deep route. Okay, this is the stuff we want to see, right? Can you win here? Well, watch Johnston on this route, and despite the insane space the defensive back gave up, he still was able to get past the defensive back, largely due to a little move he did earlier on in that route. I'm going to continue making comparisons to other players. You can make a Mike Evans comparison, and being a bigger receiver, but still using route running to find ways to get yourself open down the field. Johnston also a little faster than Evans. You know, he's wide open here. The one downside, the safety completely ran over there, so it turned into a double coverage situation, not a pure one-on-one. If there was no safety here, this is an easy touchdown. But with the safety, okay, you're going to have to try to make a tough contested catch. Well, can he do it? Well, this answer is absolutely no, and in fact, he doesn't even knock the ball away. It gets intercepted, and I would have liked to see him at least try to just knock that one away at that point, play defensive back. The reality is, this is Johnston's weakness, is contested catches. And that's something you saw on the stats is, you know, he is definitely someone who doesn't make a ton of contested catches. He doesn't go up. He's not Jamar Chase and get the ball. And that's probably the biggest criticism I have of him. He isn't a Jamar Chase. That's not what you're drafting him to be. That's just not something that he has in his game. Can he learn that? I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it, but, you know, who knows with this stuff. But as a whole, those are kind of my main thoughts about Quentin Johnston. Listen, receivers, they're hard to evaluate. And the reality is, it's one of those things where it's like, I just wonder, if you love the receiver and you feel like this receiver has this incredible upside, you know, and you thought they were like just like a great prospect, you loved them as a prospect, how early would you be willing to draft them? Because obviously, you know, getting an elite receiver, in my opinion, is the second most important position you can get an elite player at. You know, I think that corners and receivers are the next most important position outside of quarterback. And, you know, corners are so fluky. They have a good year and a bad year. If a receiver is good, they're just good. However, drafting a receiver is a bit of a wild card. You don't know if you're getting an actual elite wide receiver or not. You just don't. And that's what makes this so difficult is, well, yes, you want that elite receiver. Johnston has the ability to be that elite receiver, but is the odds of him reaching his potential that much higher than the odds of someone you draft in round 2? It's not as significant as it would be for a quarterback, where round 2 you're basically just never getting a good quarterback, stuff like that. That's what makes things interesting and why it's such a difficult challenge. But just talking about him as a prospect, how do I feel about him as a prospect? I love him as a prospect. I just do. I think that there's so much good on his tape, and I wouldn't get too freaked out about the little negatives on his tape, because I'm not that concerned. The reality is, again, receivers, they're hard. You never know. But typically the players who, you think are going to succeed and then don't, typically those are the players with high contested catch rates that end up not being able to do that in the NFL. The fact that he already kind of has a low contested catch rate, in my opinion, is almost, it's like, well, okay, then that's just not who he is. That's not what you're drafting him for. But the other stuff should still work at the next level. So, him at his worst is still pretty good, you would think, in terms of contested catch rate. So that's maybe part of what I like about him, but also part of what I'm concerned about with him. Again, no such thing as a perfect wide receiver prospect, but he's pretty good. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.